I'm Colby Schexnayder, and I'm the lead programmer at Tattie Studios, game development team that's currently working on Cairn, a first-person psychological horror game set in 17th century Scotland. All throughout the game, we have a variety of puzzles. Thought it'd be fun to show off our basic sequence puzzle and how we implement it. We have a set of 3 mirrors, each telling us something different. There's a certain sequence to get these to activate. If we activate in a wrong order, clearly that doesn't work. In the correct order, something's happening in the background. Now let's take a look at how this is implemented. Alright, we're going to clear off what's here already. Now obviously we need some way to interact with this. I'm just going to duplicate a pre-existing item that already works with our interaction system. We'll take this one and duplicate it, and then we'll bring it up in the blueprint. We'll also want to go ahead and make our Puzzle Manager class, just so that we can reference it. So, BP Puzzle Manager. There we go. So let's go ahead and open up these blueprints and then we can get started. Puzzle Manager blueprint, it'll be an object reference. We'll set that in a little bit. But we need it to be there so that we can actually complete our goal for the blueprint. The other variable we're going to want is an activated. Because if it's already activated, we want to be sure that we can read it as part of the sequence. We'll keep both of these hidden from the editor, we'll set them in the blueprints. So one of the first things that we're going to want is to make a reset function. This will allow the puzzle manager to reset it if the sequence was wrong. So reset. And all we're going to do is we're going to turn the activation off. Set. Activated. And leave that unchecked to set it to false. Now in the event graph, we're going to implement our interact event. However you decide to handle your interactions, we're going to start it here. So the first thing we're going to want to do is to check to see if we can interact with it. For that, we're going to need a branch. And a condition will be, of course, can interact. Now we have this as part of our interaction system. If yours wasn't in the interaction system that you added, you can go ahead and add it as a variable. But if we can interact, then what we want to do is we want to set activated to true. And then we're going to head over to the Puzzle Manager for a bit, and then we're going to come back here. For the Puzzle Manager itself, we are also going to need a couple of variables. First is we're going to need an array of sequence items. So I'm just going to call these puzzle items. We're going to set them to our puzzle item. Set it to the object reference, but then we want to set it to an array. This will let us choose any arbitrary number of puzzle items to add to our sequence. We also want to have a integer to track which part of the sequence we're currently in. I'm going to call that current correct. And we're just going to make that an integer. And not an integer array, just a single integer. And in the last example, we had a puzzle failed and a puzzle succeeded sound, as you heard. For this one, I think we're just going to print a debug log for our example. We're also going to set up a couple of functions. So the first will be to check the sequence order. The second function, if the puzzle failed, what is the behavior we want? Of course, if we have something, or if the puzzle fails, we want something if the puzzle succeeds. Now, heading back to the puzzle item for just a little bit. If we've activated a item in the sequence, we want the puzzle manager to check if the sequence so far is correct. We're going to pull the puzzle manager and ask it to check the sequence order. And since we already have the setup mesh created here as part of our interactable blueprints, we're basically done with the puzzle item. Though do notice that if we were to try to use it as is, the puzzle manager, it doesn't exist right now. And we could make it available in the editor, but because we can have any arbitrary number of puzzle items, and we're already going to be asking our designers to select what items go in the sequence, we can just assign those in the constructor of the puzzle manager. Or rather than constructor, we are going to do it in the event graph on event begin play. So that when the game loads, it'll load it with every puzzle item having a reference to the manager that it's part of. So let's get our array of puzzle items. We're going to go through a for each loop. In each element, we're going to set the puzzle manager. And we're going to set it with a reference to self, which is the puzzle manager blueprint we're currently in. Let's make sure we connect that node. Now, even if we're going to set each puzzle item individually, we don't have to also set each puzzle item's reference to the puzzle manager. Although, speaking of setting each item individually, we're going to want to make sure that the array of puzzle items can be seen in the editor. So make sure you check that. Make sure it's instance editable. And we're good to go. Now we can start developing the rest of the puzzle manager. Alright, so first thing we want to do is to get our check sequence order working, because fail or succeed, it's going to depend on the order that the puzzle's been done in. So current correct is our assumption for how many we've got correct already. It's going to start at 0. And we're going to loop across just a normal for loop from 0 to our currently correctly assigned. And while we're doing that, we're going to need to have our array of puzzle items available. So we can get that. Let's get that here. And it's going to be the index from the for loop. We're going to check to see if it's activated. That a little easier to see. And we're going to branch. If it's activated, then it's part of the sequence. However, if it's not activated, it's false, then the sequence was wrong, and our puzzle fails. So we'll call our puzzle fail function. And of course, if the sequence was already wrong, we don't need to check the rest of the for them. So, instead, we can just go ahead and return from here. But if the sequence has been completed, then we want to increment our current correct counter because we're ready for the next in the sequence. Then we want to get the length of our array. Because if the length of our array is the same or smaller than our current correct, then the sequence has been completed. And of course, that will involve another branch. And this time, we're checking true. And if it is, then our puzzle succeeds. So we're going to call that function. Puzzle succeeds. And since that's the end, and the for loop has already been completed, we don't need a return node. Now let's take a look at our puzzle fail function. If our puzzle failed, the first thing we want to do is we want to set current correct, and we want to zero that out. Then we want to go through each item in our sequence. And make sure to call its reset. This lets the item itself handle how exactly it resets, whether it plays a sound or an animation, anything like that is fine. The puzzle manager is the one that tells it to reset. And that's actually all we need for our puzzle fail. We'll go ahead and add a print so that we can see that it failed. We're not going to worry about sounds or animations, just the logic of the puzzle. Moving on to puzzle succeed, we're once again going to run through a for each loop. And in our case, we're going to turn off interaction. So we're going to set can interact to false, make sure it's coming from the element in the array, and we have another is interactable, which was responsible for the text that was appearing. We're going to turn that off as well, because there's no is interactable there, so make sure it's from the puzzle item. Like before, we're not going to worry about sounds or animation, so we're just going to print success. There's always ways you can do better, but this system offers a lot of flexibility, which is why I like it. We have fail, we have succeed, we have check sequence. Now we can go ahead and actually put them in the game. So for our puzzle item, in our case, if we see the viewport, it's just a cube. So first, we're going to drag the puzzle items in. So that's 1, 2, 3, and we can have as many as we want. We can have 6, 10, 20 if you felt like there wasn't enough work already. And then we'll need our puzzle manager. And in our puzzle manager, we have our array of puzzle items. Now, we have 6 cubes. If we don't want to use all of them in the sequence, we can just have them here and have their own activation work, and if they're not in the sequence, they just won't check. But if they're part of the puzzle, then they should all be in the sequence themselves. Of course, having one that is part of the puzzle but not supposed to be activated is another room for improvement, where we could have it check specifically that that one's false. So we're just going to make a very simple sequence. Start from the bottom left and go counterclockwise. And we can just pick them all out. And that should be enough. So let's go ahead and play from here. skip over our introduction. Now, if I press the wrong one, failed immediately. But if I go in the right sequence, success. And because we turned off the interaction, as soon as I look away from the cube, we no longer have the message, and we no longer have the ability to interact. But say you want to change the order of the sequence. Now we can do that just fine by changing the order of the array in the puzzle manager. So instead of our last cube being the top left, say I want it to be hit before the middle cube. Let me just drag that up. And now if I try to solve it in the same way, it'll fail. So nice, easy reorder, very versatile, very simple, just all around very nice system. So some things to consider while you're working on this. We've completed the puzzle, but on its own that doesn't do anything. So you'll need to have some sort of signal for the puzzle success, for gates to open, sounds to play, just general way for the puzzle succeeding to interact with the environment somehow. You also need to expand for triggering animations and sound as the items are being pressed, as the puzzle's completed. A whole lot of other events that can make this a more robust system. But because of the simplicity of how the puzzle's starting with, it's easy to expand on it. I hope you enjoyed that look in how we implement one of our puzzles. There are plenty more puzzles all throughout Castle Cairn. We've plenty more planned later on. I hope this was fun, and if you're interested, we do have a page on Steam, so please consider wishlisting us. Thank you, and look forward to more.